Now, as we move into our final session of the day, we turn to a topic that sits at our heart, or at the heart of every learner's journey: identity and self-discovery. Adolescence is a time of constant change where young individuals are shaping who they are, what they believe in, and how they see the world around them. Understanding this phase is key to supporting their growth with intention and care. In navigating identity and self-discovery in adolescence, the experts will share ways to guide young leaders better as they build confidence, resilience, and a strong sense of self. Let's give a warm and energetic welcome to Andrea Thomas, the CEO and founder of ARMOUR Families Facing Fentanyl, and Verna Felder, the CEO of Urban School Transformations LLC. Welcome.
Lise, so listen, if you guys think that we're gonna sit up here and do all the work, that's not gonna happen. We need to engage with you. Our idea of a fireside chat is for us to engage in dialogue and communication about this topic. Right, Andrea?
So navigating identity and self-discovery for adolescents. Today is so different than what we experienced when we were growing up. It changes with every generation. And in education, there's so many different types of education. And I'm out of the norm a little bit here because I'm a drug preventionist. So I teach today's drug prevention. I create solutions for broader changes through ARMOUR, through science, technology, and innovation. But I started this in 2018. And I'm gonna give you a little bit of information about myself. In 2018, I had a 32-year-old daughter, one of 4, ill one night, and out of her regular medication. And someone that loves her gives her this half of pill. Gives her a pill, she takes half. It looks like her regular medication, and it kills her instantly. As an educated woman and a parent of 4 children, everything that I knew about teaching my kids about prevention and self-awareness and how to watch out for themselves really flew out the window. My daughter died from fentanyl poisoning. I didn't know what fentanyl was. I didn't know there was a medical grade of fentanyl. I didn't know there was illicit fentanyl. I'd never heard of it. So at that point, I had to begin to educate myself. The only problem is it was too late for me, right, with my daughter. So what I do now, through Facing Fentanyl, we're the home of the National Fentanyl Prevention and Awareness Day. We educate students across the United States, but not only youth. We go to workplaces, we work with federal agencies, and I teach law enforcement. You would think law enforcement has all of these pieces, right? No. But they don't. You're correct, sir. And then we bridge those gaps, right, in communities. But speaking to teachers, speaking to educators that work with our youth every day, you're everything to us. And so what we've begun to learn are the obstacles, really, that you face every day. And now you have to teach this. And so I'm here today to thank you and let you know that we see your importance for the work that you do every day and how valuable you are to youth. And I'll catch up a little bit on some other things and give you some more of our experiences and ask you more questions. And where would you like to maybe throw that first question out at today?
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about where I come from. As you know, I'm here representing the Urban School Transformation LLC. And what we do is we represent and we educate children in urban environments. And what we've learned is that poverty has a profound effect on the way that children learn. Not only does it have a profound effect on the way children learn, but poverty can cause trauma. And there are certain forms of trauma that will literally shut down that part of the brain that's responsible for receiving, retaining, and learning information. So as someone who works exclusively in an urban community, myself and my business partner have come up with different forms of tools and strategies to help educators be more sensitive to the populations that they serve. And when it comes to adolescence, I want to ask you this question. I'm going to throw a question out for the group for you to ponder and for us to discuss. The question is, when we talk about identity and adolescence, what does that mean in today's context? And not only that, think about your schools, think about the population that you serve, the children that you represent, and make that specific to this topic. So that is our question, and now we'd like some answers. Dr. Scott, do you have something to contribute?
Sure. I'll talk loud. I can do it. I think kind of everything we've talked about thus far in this conference has really touched on your question, from sensitivity to know what adolescents are going through, to being culturally aware of some of the risks, like fentanyl and other drugs, as teachers, as educators, being connected with other stakeholders in the community, whether law enforcement or counseling community or mental health community, knowing that it's not only substances, but mental health concerns like anxiety that Sterling talked about after lunch. All of these things are kind of pieces of the puzzle, and being as informed as we can be, I think, is part of that process.
Thank you, Dr. Scott. Anybody else have anything to contribute? We heard you. I could hear you down here. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. No more questions on that one.
So when we think about underserved communities and where we used to think these kind of dangers happened, right? We thought of drug users, we thought of people in seedy places, wouldn't let our kids go with this group or that group because maybe they were the bad kids. That's not what's happening today. Every age, every population are affected from these new types of drugs, right? There's a new drug landscape. And we think about what teachers have to invest at school, so much that they know, and the obstacles that you see within your youth right there in your classroom. Everybody has a different story, right? And you begin to learn them over the year and know their story. And there's still so much that we don't know. And so I wonder how we go about, what are some ideas that you have about when you go into your classrooms, how to bring these real world obstacles, these truths, these realities, when kids are so immersed in technology and social media, which is not realistic at all, right? That's their reality today. And then they go home and they have these real life situations that are happening to them. How do you put these pieces into learning, whether it's a math class, a history class, and keep them consistent? Because see, when I went to school, there was a DARE program that came in once every maybe couple of years, and they taught us something, sent us home with a pencil, and that was it. That's all we learned. Today, that's not enough, and that didn't work really as well as it needs to. Today, that would never work, just telling us not to do something. Giving these kids these core foundations, talking about real life situations, and removing stigma from that, right? So that they are able to have conversations wherever they are and understand what these real world dangers are. Is there anybody here that does that brings this into their classrooms and broaches these subjects without being scary, without these scare tactics that really turn kids off? Kind of?
I'm going to say kind of, because, I'm going to say kind of, because, yeah. So the reason I say kind kind of is because, like I said, I'm very fortunate to work in the school that I work at, and we know that when we want to bring up a topic like this, like talking about school rules again, or talking about a really serious topic, without question, we already do an assembly. It's brought up in, say, like harmonization classes. It's brought up in wellness classes. It's brought up, our middle school, at least in our middle school and high school, there's a mandatory class called advisory. So they already talk to the students about these things. Now, in terms of us as teachers, me personally, I know that I've had to talk about issues, and sorry, I might get emotional because this one is a tough situation. I remember I was substitute teaching at a private school, not the one I'm currently at right now, but I was substitute teaching at a private school, and as soon as I walked in, the principal said, "You may have a really tough time because one of their classmates just died from leukemia." And for me, it was very difficult to walk into that classroom because there are times I didn't know what to say, and I felt like I failed them because, in a sense, all I could say was, all I could tell the students was, "I'm really sorry for your loss." And I felt I felt pathetic because I was like, maybe there's more I should have said. So that was a particular situation I can think of. I think that moving forward, having some professional developments for teachers, like teacher trainings on here's how to talk about these issues in your class. Me personally, I know if there was a problem with some students in my class, I don't wait till the end of the day. I address it immediately. Like if I heard there was a big fight happening at recess, I don't just jump into okay, let's learn about math. I go, okay, let's talk about this. Let's talk about why fighting is not okay.
Yeah. Just being open and honest in those real life situations and letting them know that it is so. These things happen everywhere. And if we can talk through them and have that understanding, right? That's what you're telling me.
Yeah, I'll just be open. I would tell the teachers, you know what, just be open. When I was in high school, they openly talked to us about the topic of suicide because there were a couple of suicides happening in that same city. So my advice to teachers would be just be honest about it. Be open about it because you're human too. And if the kids see your human side talking about it, then I think they understand. And I think that starts to open up the conversation for, say, back home with the parents or back home with their friends.
And as we build our curriculums for drug education and this constant ever-changing, right, it's different for us every day now. You know, I've been doing this for 8 years and I'm an expert in fentanyl, but every day there's a new emerging drug. And so we learn from you. So you don't know how valuable this is to get this information from you, how to reach young people and what you're doing in your classrooms. And I think that bridges that gap, right? For us to give you that information, to give you those resources, and we can build off of each other.
So I want to be completely vulnerable. When I saw that I was on this particular panel, I had to look up when Adolescence started because I really didn't remember. And it starts at around age 10. And so with that said, I want to talk about another drug that we might not even view as a drug, and that's social media.
Yes.
And the effects that social media has on today's youth is, for instance, what they see, they emulate. And then when they emulate it, they bring those behaviors inside of the classrooms. Something was going on with TikTok about 6, 7. And all of the kids, every time you said, okay, it's 5 o'clock, everybody would yell out 6, 7. Or if you said something about, okay, it's 7 a.m. tomorrow, 6, 7. And I'm like, what are they talking about? And so just, when we're talking about adolescence and identity, we cannot be naive about the effect that social media has. So my question to you is, what are some of the biggest challenges that you see in your schools that are having an effect on the adolescents in your classroom or in your educational communities?
Yeah, I'll speak on that. I teach in the alternative school program, and a lot of the kids that come to me have issues with using social media properly. I try to teach them that there's nothing wrong with using social media, but it's about curating your feed. That's one thing that they don't necessarily think about. So what I try to do is flip it. And when we have our morning meetings, I'll actually use some things from Instagram or YouTube or whatever as content to help them understand these different concepts that, you know, I want them to know about, whether it's developing resilience or even an element of financial literacy, something about having a growth mindset, or, you know, 99 things that you can do that makes you better. No, it's 10 things that you can do that makes you better than 99% of people. So we talk about a lot of different concepts, but we use social media to do it. So I try to model for them that the way you curate your feed matters. You don't have to pick all this negative stuff and let that soak into your brain and change who you are. A lot of the kids, because they use social media so much, they compare themselves to other people. And that makes them anxious, that makes them depressed, and because of that, they act out on it. It's manifested in the classrooms all the time. So that's what I see. The anxiety, the depression, the downward spirals that they go through, it really affects them negatively in the classroom. And you're right, it is like a drug, because they just can't stop. They doom scroll through TikTok for hours, and they can't give it up.
And I'm hearing you speak about the anxiety and the depression. What do you do in your classroom, or what does your school or your organization do to counteract that behavior?
I talk to them a lot about mental health. I teach in a very isolated, small group of students. And we work a lot with mental and emotional health and well-being. So I have them take a lot of different inventories. One of them is life traps. And that helps me understand their background a bit more, so that, I can figure out whether or not they may have been abused in some way as a child, or whether they just have this strong mistrust of adults, whether or not they've been abandoned or socially excluded, maybe because of how they look or what they do, what clothes they wear. So that tells me a lot about the students, and it helps me be able to help them think about things in a little bit different way. I try to turn everything negative into a positive and just make them think differently.
Understood. Thank you for that. There was another question over here, too.
Hello?
Okay, so I didn't really have a question. I was trying to answer yours. Your question was, what challenges are we seeing our students face in the classroom? I'm a teacher of 14 years. I currently teach in an alternative school. I've been there for 10 years. Social media is an issue, but that's not even the first thing that we are working with in our building. Our ACE scores are through the roof, so our trauma scores are beyond even anything. And just for an example, we had a child who was sex trafficked for 8 months, then recovered. They'd been hooked on meth by her abusers to keep her there. And her family thought it was a good idea to have her put back in school 2 months later from recovery. We have several students who are rough camping at a lake in a tent because they don't have anything or anyone. I'm in charge of the food bank in our building because our hunger is through the roof. There is maybe 10% of students have parental support. We have probably, what would you say our homeless population is, including our instability? Probably 40 to 50% of our students are considered homeless. We have a 40 to 50% IEP 504 caseload sped rate. So when you're talking about challenges in a classroom, when you're talking about, we had a couple years ago, we had acid, LSD, and meth going through our girls' bathrooms. So those are the kinds of challenges that we see on the daily.
Where are you from, if you don't ask? Mind
Yes,
me asking?
please.
Oklahoma.
Yes. So we talk about these challenges. You have so many that you have to figure out daily. Do you find it helpful for people like us, people like my teams, to come in and give you those resources, give that understanding, and give you tools to address some of those things on a daily basis? Because you have so much to manage on top of your job, right, to educate these kids.
So those resources are very helpful when they are realistic and something that can really be implemented and they're applicable, because there are so many things that are like, we can build all the relationships we want with these kids. They're very transient a lot of the time, and we only get to have them, our drop rate for attendance is insane, and they're gone, and then they come back, and then they're gone, and then they come back, and then they're gone, and then they come back. And so, we were just talking to our principal today, and they are now dealing with, as of today, the worst child abuse case they've ever seen.
I want to ask a question. Are you a private or a publicly funded school?
Public.
And are you taking advantage of McKinney-Vento resources?
We do that. A lot of our kids don't trust it. A lot of our families don't trust it, especially with we have a very high Hispanic population, with all of the ICE and everything, because ICE is active in our city right now. They don't touch anything that has a government name on it with a 10-foot pole.
We need to speak offline, because where you're from, I'm from the Detroit area, and
I'm originally from Milwaukee.
we're speaking the same language. And so you and I need to talk offline, because you are one of the reasons, and the population that you represent is why my partner and I co-founded Can You Survive Poverty? Because we need to be able to immerse educators in what it feels like so that they can be more empathetic and compassionate, and not only that, equip them with how to connect with the children so that the families, because what we notice is in poverty, and I'm sorry guys, I gotta just address this. In poverty, families do not trust the system. They don't. And so what we've done is we have strategies that we have perfected over the last 20 years to get the families to be open and trusting enough to receive the services. Because McKinney-Vento will provide, but like you said, where I come from, they have to fill out the paperwork, and if they don't fill out the paperwork, we can't provide the services. So
The students that were
talk
living
afterwards.
at the lake refused to do the McKinney-Vento because we actually got them into a program that got them, it's like a tiny housing situation. It's all these little
Yeah.
tiny houses, and they refused to go because they couldn't take their dog.
Well, we see a lot of that too. So sometimes it's them and sometimes it's us, and we just have to do the best that we can. I get that. Did you have something that you wanted to add?
Well, I think that this is great because we're going all over the place with this, right? And that's what we intended to do, was open up the conversation to see where the pieces are missing, see where help is needed, and encourage you to find these strategies to attack all of these different things. So we've talked about social media. We've talked about dangers. These heavy subjects that happen, you know, drugs aren't the only one. Mm-hmm. Yes, the poverty. And then we've also have this other group of, it can happen to anybody, right? So we're not even picking out just one piece right here. If we take this back to the social media right now is hot topic on the news. You'll see it everywhere. I work with many of those advocates and most of those parents that you'll see on today's news talking about the dangers of social media. I can tell you hundreds of names of parents that are in their home, the safest place that there is for their young people, and they're losing those children in their bedroom right next to theirs. Because social media is giving them this tool now to order a lot of these drugs, these harmful substances, not just substances, there's so many other harms out there, right, that these kids can access on social media. And so I think that is a huge topic of conversations in classrooms, and the realities, the responsibilities, and then how to cope with these types of things. We don't just see drug harms, right? We see the bullying, we see the sex harms, we see all kinds of crimes that hit these kids, that reach these kids through social media. So that's one of the dangers. The realistic conversations. So I can sit here and I can tell you that I would go into your classroom and we can talk about the 2 milligrams of fentanyl that will kill you, the dangerous vape, the tobacco, the drinking, all of these pieces. A lot of times we touch on these main issues, right? The immediate danger, but we don't talk about the other harms that are associated. We don't talk to kids that, you know, I can tell you that one pill could kill you and that might be the end of the line the first time you try. But what we see a lack of is understanding of all of the consequences if you survive. How your families tear apart in distance. How you become vulnerable, maybe homeless, lose your job. These are kids that are just starting out when we're talking about high school students. And so much can end in that moment for them, right? They disconnect in the family. The vulnerability could lead to the human trafficking. The homelessness can lead to human trafficking. Not having food can lead to bring these kids into these vulnerable situations where they get hurt. And we never talk about these big pieces of the picture. And I think these are things that you're talking about that you see. You see these pictures. And are there these conversations around any of those topics in the classrooms that you serve? Do you find that they come up?
So they know a lot more, and they've seen a lot more. Sorry, I'll raise my voice. They know a lot more about negative aspects of the things that they are doing or the things that they have done because they've lost people. They've seen it take out their best friend. They've seen it take out these things. And like when they legalized for medicinal purposes marijuana, I had several conversations of like, and I know this is a low-key element, right? But we deal with the THC vapes all the time in the building and stuff like that. That's one of our biggest things that we confiscate every morning at metal detection things. And I was talking to them like, yes, it's not physically habit forming, but it is dependency forming. And that was data that they didn't have, that it makes it where you use that crutch to calm down. You don't learn how to naturally let yourself come down from anger. You go take a hit to calm you down, so you lose those coping mechanisms on your own. It's not physically habit forming, no, but it can be dependency forming. And they didn't know that. And so I talk a lot about that, about how that's why there is a 21 limit, because you need to get your brain developed and those coping skills and those abilities developed before you start using a crutch. But then there's also the flip side to it, where there's some emerging data right now about how THC is one of the most beneficial things for super ADHD people. to help you focus and zone in. There's something about it, but they can't extract it from all this bad stuff,
Yeah.
right? So it's just one of those things where it's like, we have these conversations and we can show them the data, we can talk about it, we can try to get there emotionally, but they're already there and they see it and they choose it because they think that that is the break they need from what is their current reality.
It's an
And,
escape.
Yeah, feeling good for
It's
a
an
couple of
escape.
minutes when your world is constantly crumbling. You don't know when you're going to eat next. You don't know where you're sleeping. You don't know if mom's going to be on a bender when you get home.
Yeah, we get it.
Well,
I'm gonna
that's
let
a
you
perfect
respond to
segue.
that,
Oh,
and
well,
then I wanna
okay, I
switch
thought
gears
that would be a
bit.
perfect segue into
Yeah.
your next question. So these traumatic experiences, these life experiences that lead into substance use. And then there's this other piece for fentanyl naive, is what we call them, drug naive young people, or those experimenting, right? Because that's a natural part of growing up, is experimenting. May not be with drugs, it might be with something else. It could be with relationships. There are many things that young people experiment with. But to give them the knowledge and give them the understanding in today's world that is affecting them so rapidly is the most important thing, to me anyway, because I know how quickly it is for a young person's life to be taken. If you were to go to the websites of mine or many of the people that I work with, you would see statistics, you would gather information, but the thing that would stand out to you the most would be the faces that you see of young people of every color, every nationality, every age, from a toddler through an elderly person, right? That look like your next door neighbor, that look like the kids that you pass in the street, that look like young people that would never be touched from drugs. And I see hundreds of thousands of these faces. And so really I'm here today to urge you to take that piece in and to know how important it is and to reach out to us, because you are the people that know your classes, that know these young people the best. We can't go in there and just say, you should do this. We're not in there every day with those students. We learn from you. I don't want to take too much time because I know that you have more questions, but I would encourage you to reach out to us. And we don't work these scare tactics. I wish I could. It scares me to death. I would love to scream from the mountaintops how deadly this is. But it doesn't work like that with young people. And so we have to be creative, and we have to think of new ways. And to work with you, we just want you to know how appreciative that we are of you. Many times we go to schools and we get turned away. We value what you do, and we can learn from you, and we need to learn from you. And so I thank you for giving a couple of minutes to me today, and I'm going to let you close this out, and you have so many more important topics that you can hit. And I know we bounced around a lot, but.
Okay, so we cannot have real conversation and genuine conversation about adolescence identity without talking about this. So I'm gonna tell a story. My specialty is K through 8th grade students. And in one of my schools, we had the parent of a student come in and tell us that this particular student could not use the boys' bathroom or the girls' bathroom because they were gender fluid. So at that point, this is where my next question comes in. What role does schools play in either supporting or unintentionally limiting young people and experimenting with and exploring their identities? So I'm gonna just throw that out there for you. Who would like to comment on that? Because it's real, it's happening. We're talking about identity and adolescence. Let's talk about it. And I did say K through 8th grade, which meant that this particular student Charlene, do you remember this student at our, how old were they? I think 12. 12. So what do you do? What do you do when a parent fully embraces the child's freedom and exploring their identity, but you have a school and it's only a boys' bathroom or a girls' bathroom? How does that work, and what responsibility do we have, if any, to provide facilities for this student? I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
I was just saying, like the others were saying, like, shouldn't we like legally have to let them use the bathroom of the gender that they identify with?
No. You have to provide a single stall bathroom that is a private bathroom that is gender neutral. It is not a female bathroom, it is not a male bathroom, it is a gender neutral bathroom, but it is a single stall.
Okay.
You have to provide that by law.
Yeah, sorry, I misheard. Yeah, I meant, sorry, I misheard, I meant that.
There are some districts that, based upon the gender of birth, that is the bathroom that you're going to be forced to use, but that you're just opening yourself up to massive amounts of lawsuits.
And that is where the conversation comes in, what you just said right there.
Yeah.
Can you repeat it?
School districts that enforce the use of the restroom based upon the sex at birth, then you're opening yourself up to massive amounts of lawsuits. So, I mean, it would be my suggestion that you would offer a single stall bathroom to accommodate that student. A lot of students that are in this situation will choose to be put on a 504 because there are life abilities that are affected by this choice and transition. And then most definitely, if they are in a 504, then you have to provide those accommodations by law, which can include the use of a single stall bathroom.
Okay. I think we have one more question right here. No questions? So how do we end this today? Do we end this with questions and solutions about what role schools have in supporting adolescents' identity? And what does that look like? What does it look like for your school? What does it look like for you? How do you support adolescents in exploring and experimenting with their identities while still maintaining core values? And I guess, should you? Who wants to take us home with the answer to that question? Oh. And so I'm going to end this conversation because I'm hearing what you said. But yesterday, we talked about teacher biases. And while in a perfect world, what you're saying makes sense and it may even be the law, there's still going to be teachers who are going to be in resistance to that. We're experiencing that right now in our community. So I think the answer to the question is to provide training around how to support teachers, support children, in exploring their identity and in experimenting, making sure that that professional development becomes part of your training every year. And I'm gonna turn it back over to you.
Well, as we close, when I hear all of these things, you're not just educators, you're not just administrators, you're not just doing your job, right? You help to shape people's futures, how they think, how they process the world, and how they make decisions. And none of that is small. You are a major influence to your students, and that's impact. And so really, I just want to close by thanking you and letting us take some moments to just breach some of these subjects. I know that it seems short and not directed, But it's good to open up the conversation to other pieces that you probably haven't gone over in the last 3 days. So thank you.
And you all are diehards. This is the last session of the day. I'm not sure that I would be here if I wasn't presenting. We're in the Bellagio. Please enjoy that. Thank you to Education 2.0, and thank you again for staying with us.